Welcome to AIM High Live. I'm your host, Jim Park. In this episode, we'll discuss the importance of diversity with two of AIM's most important industry partners. I was fortunate to catch up with both Gerson Guzman and Anna Marie Curran. Gerson Guzman, thank you for being here. Anna Marie Curran, great meeting you, and thanks for joining us today. I just wanted to talk a little about sort of diversity efforts among our industry partners. We know that women and diverse individuals, minorities, are trying to make inroads into this business, but we have a long way to go. And your two organizations are doing important work to further that cause. And so we want to talk a little bit about what you're working on, your organizations respectively, and see how we can all partner up together to support this important cause. So with that, Anna Marie, tell us a little bit about yourself, who you work for, how'd you get into this business, that kind of stuff.
So I'm a principal at a firm called Avidity Advisors. We're a relatively new firm. We started commercial operations just January of 2020. And essentially we're an advisor exclusively to private equity firms as well as the investors active in their transactions, primarily around capital raising, capital markets, and secondary advisory work. So that's my day job. I'm also on the board of directors at the Women's Association of Venture and Equity, as well as on their New York steering committee.
How did you get involved with WAVE?
I moved to New York from Missouri, and I felt like I didn't really know very many people. And so I had interacted with a few of the women from the Chicago chapter when I was at my prior firm in Missouri, and they seemed friendly and welcoming. So when I moved to New York, I reached out and asked to get involved, and it's just grown over the years in terms of my involvement with the organization.
Yeah, I think these organizations, whether it's NAA, WAVE, or AIM, and other organizations that are out there, it's a great way of building out a network, and you can never forget how important that is. Gerson, how did you get into this business?
So I came by it in a non-traditional way. So I started in operations at a telecom firm, but ended up joining a middle market private equity firm right out of business school in 2005. Yeah. In fact, the building right over my shoulders where I worked for about 10 years. And now I am a co-founder of my own firm. We launched Saba Capital Partners in September of last year.
Tell me a little about what you're focused on.
So lower middle market buyouts with a focus on buy and build opportunities. So really looking at markets that we can consolidate and build market leading platforms with a technology and digital transformation focus post-closing to scale the businesses.
That's right. It's something to celebrate. I think all of us, anytime we have a women or a minority-owned firm being launched, we should all celebrate that together. So congratulations.
Thank you.
And I'm sure there's a lot of folks out there wanting to support you and in your new journey. So that's terrific.
I know, there definitely are, and I'm very grateful for all of them.
How did you get involved with NAA?
So I joined NAA about 10 years ago. And I tell this story often. I've been told throughout my life that I should engage with those people that I aspire to be like, and that was exactly what this organization offered. I mean, it was a successful group of Latinos, many who shared similar backgrounds, and having entered the industry, it just felt like I got to plug into this group of very successful individuals.
Yeah, Anna Marie, you talked about how you built the community, a set of relationships, and you're now on the board. You're contributing in a more direct way to the organization. What personally do you get out of being a part of this organization?
WAVE was really founded with the idea that, we wanted to provide support and educational opportunities as well as networking opportunities to women to really just help them succeed throughout their careers. And I'd say, for me, I've met a lot of great women through the organization. It's certainly a cause that I feel passionate about, as well as I think the way that we organize our events, many of them are quite tailored. So I think particularly if you're part of an organization where it's a fairly broad membership base, it's more efficient to be able to find the events and the opportunities that are most impactful to you in your career. So I'd say that's probably what I've gotten out of it the most, is obviously that community and support, but also the educational opportunities as well.
If you look at all the firms out there that are women or minority owned, and you look at the assets under management, we represent as a collective less than 2%, 1.7% AUM, I believe, is a number. How do we go about increasing that number?
A lot of why there hasn't been more progress made is that I think a lot of firms approach it from a very reactive perspective, but I think you really need to look at other elements as well. You need to evaluate and be honest with yourself in terms of your recruiting and hiring practices, to understand if there's something you could be doing differently to broaden your pipeline of women and other diverse candidates into your organization. I think things like unconscious bias training, all of those elements together, it's not simply reacting when you see a diverse candidate. It's, recruiting right now, particularly for diverse candidates, it's like hand-to-hand combat, and you're not going to make progress if you don't really take active, deliberate steps to make that happen, in my opinion. And I think a lot of firms just haven't really dedicated the time or resources to make that happen. And of course, it's a bit self-serving for me to say, but also finding organizations within the industry, like the two of ours, that you can partner with that can help you really meet your goals from a diversity perspective.
A lot of times people don't talk about retention and promotion, growth
Yeah.
within the organization. What other stuff can firms be doing to make sure that once people are in, diverse candidates, women, minority candidates are in the door, how do we make sure that they progress? I mean, there are some, we've done some studies internally around some of the challenges, unconscious bias being some, but there's some structural issues that prohibit particularly women from moving up the ladder, but diverse candidates as well, because there are no role models, the mentorship isn't quite there to support their growth. What else can be happening to support folks, kind of moving up their career ladder?
What's been most impactful for me in my career is really having my group of supporters, and not always women, by the way. Some of the strongest advocates for me in my career have been men, but I think really providing that mentorship and advocacy has been so important for me. And I think it's just important whenever a situation occurs where perhaps you're not quite sure if it has something to do with your gender or your race. It's helpful to have folks that you trust that you can go to get a second opinion, because sometimes it's related, sometimes it's not. But if you don't have folks that you can go to get that second opinion, that you really trust their perspective, then some of those things can wear on you over time.
So WAVE has a kind of a signature program to support young professionals coming into the business and so on. Tell me a little bit about that program. I know you guys went virtual for a few years. You're going to come back in person this year.
Yes.
What's in store for WAVE this year in terms of this program?
WAVE was really founded with this mission of supporting and helping women advance throughout their career. And in more recent years, we've significantly enhanced our strategic efforts on really broadening the pipeline of women into the industry in particular. So the Career Forum that you sort of alluded to there, this will be our 6th year of hosting it. It'll be held in New York on October 28th, which we're very excited about. And the mission of the event is really to simply provide undergraduate and graduate students, as well as those who've graduated from one of those programs within the last few years, with just the opportunity to learn about different careers within the industry, to network with their peers, as well as start to get to know some firms that might want to hire them. And so we actually provide all of the supporters and sponsors of the event with the resume book of the candidates as well. We have representation from nearly 90 different educational institutions. We partner with the career services at those various institutions to help us promote the event. And ensure that we've got a robust pool of candidates, so it's also valuable for our sponsors of the event.
Do a good chunk of the attendees, do they get placed with the firm?
There have been a number of placements, as well as we've had some sponsors who've historically even interviewed some candidates from at the forum itself.
Okay, that's great. So if you're looking for a career path, potentially an opportunity to get a job, that's a great place to be. That's great. So Gerson, NAA has done a lot of different work, policy work, you've done education, you have some internship programs. What kind of focus are you placing on future leaders and folks that we need to all kind of cultivate to make sure that we have a more diverse industry in the years ahead?
You used the word deliberate, and that's an approach we're taking. We launched the Pathway Fellowship Program a couple years ago. really to bring in young, predominantly Latino talent into our own firms, because we can influence how we're helping students get that first foot on the ladder. So the program is targeting high school juniors and seniors and college freshmen and sophomores so that we can give them an opportunity to then learn about the industry, finance, investment banking, asset management, and prepare them to be competitive for that pivotal junior year internship. And it's in the short amount of time we've had this, it's been very successful. Our fellows have already gone on to get other internships as well. And it's all about widening that mouth of the funnel and bringing more talent into the industry.
I mean, the pipeline is a big issue, right? Trying to broaden the pipeline. But we're also working on efforts kind of at the sort of broader level, regulatory level, government level, to ensure more transparency, making sure that we are not only, out there trying to promote engagement in this industry by more diverse candidates, but we also want to make sure structurally we're in an environment where have more, that we know how to measure success and progress. Tell me a little bit about some of the work that you're doing at the policy level to make sure that happens.
Perfect. So the New America Alliance, one of its core principles when it was founded was around civic engagement, political awareness. And we really treat it as a way to create lasting change. One of the efforts that we've been engaged in is really increasing transparency around how assets are being allocated to diverse managers. So in California, and AIM was a supporter of this effort, we were able to successfully get AB 890 passed, which required both CalPERS and CalSTRS to generate a report about how the money is being allocated. We're not looking for set-asides, we're not looking to mandate, but we do think that with the data out there, that will draw attention to the issue you mentioned earlier, which is less than 2% of assets under management are being managed by diverse-owned firms. We're extending those efforts hopefully to other states this year. We're making a list of where we can take that, and it's all about transparency again. And then we're also working on a couple federal efforts. We're working with a senator to see if we can get some legislation around transparency for some of the federal plans. And then we're trying to work with the SEC in advancing some greater disclosures around asset managers.
Tell me a little bit about that, about the SEC effort. I know a lot of these disclosure efforts traditionally has been voluntary in nature, and most people have rarely filled them out. So it's very hard to get, data. So what are you looking to do with the SEC?
So complements of the Dodd-Frank law that was passed in 2012 or implemented in 2012, we all have to fill out the ADV form every year. And it is a very detailed form that already asks for a lot of information about the ownership of the firms. So we're looking to have that same form utilized to include some questions around the demographics of the firms. And we think that that will provide the industry with more standardized information on the composition of the firms, and thereby allowing limited partners and other allocators to look at performance and other metrics as part of their own programs and make some decisions involving that information.
Are we getting a receptive response?
We hope so. I mean, the wheels of the regulatory world move very slowly. I think the SEC and the chairman have been out there advocating for increased transparency around various other metrics. And so we're hoping that we have a receptive audience. And it's not, in our view, a burdensome requirement. We already, as an industry, provide that information.
There's always seems to be a pushback, right? People don't want to change, or institutions don't want to change. But these are sort of simple things.
It'll be a couple columns in in the report you're already providing.
It's hard to track change and progress without having underlying data in place. And that's, I think, all of us are kind of looking for that, which is like, just tell us the basic information. So are we better than last year or the year before? Right now, it's very hard to tell. That obviously there are some reports and studies that are out there that track that. We have not seen the kind of progress we had hoped, particularly given the whole social justice discussion that we've gone through over the last several years. People are talking about creating change, but it's been very incremental at best, and we just need to keep pushing at this. So.
Absolutely. And look, consistent data is what we all as investors want, right? We're numbers driven in the industry. We're asking for reporting that is numbers driven.
What can the allocators do to ensure that more women and minorities kind of get considered as part of whether it's emerging managers program or anything else that they might be doing?
I think sometimes there's a perception in the industry that allocating to a diverse manager or a women-owned manager, that means you're sacrificing some returns perspective. And I think that mentality in particular is what needs to shift. There's a lot of really, really talented diverse-owned GPs whose returns absolutely hold up to the broader industry. But I think for a lot of allocators, that's sometimes still the perception, which is problematic.
Yeah, no, I think you're absolutely right. I mean, the perception is actually false. We know that minority-owned or women-owned firms generally perform at or sometimes better than the industry benchmark, but that fact it's not widely considered to be the case, right? We talked about allocation of capital to more minority-owned businesses and women-owned businesses into the market. We know women-owned firms are more likely to invest in women-owned businesses. Minority-owned firms are more likely to invest in more minority-owned firms. So if you want sort of broad economic growth, you have to have people at the helm of controlling money that look diverse, that look like the rest of America, right? And so I think that's sort of the case that we always have to kind of make with everyone.
And there are also a number of programs too, specifically with that focus, right, of helping to get dollars into women or diverse-owned GPs. I mean, for example, there's a board member of WAVE, Chrissy Pariso. She teamed up with Marsha Page, and they have an organization that actually provides capital explicitly to women and diverse-owned GPs. And so I think if you're an allocator supporting some of those programs as well, where they can provide creative capital solutions to help get your firm up and going, I think that's another challenge for women, and I suspect for diverse-owned GPs in particular, in general. But I think often they haven't necessarily had the same opportunity for wealth creation if they've been held back from a promotions perspective. And so I think some of those creative solutions to provide upfront capital can be really impactful in increasing the number of women or diverse-owned GPs.
Gerson, you've been in the business a while, and you're setting up your firm now. What lesson learned can you share with folks around setting up your own firm, getting out there, knocking on some doors, getting people to follow your vision towards, setting up the fund? I mean, what can you tell other diverse individuals?
It's about taking that leap, right? And look, I think technology has both facilitated the entrepreneurial spirit as well as created some challenges as well. I think in terms of fundraising, capital gathering, it's easier to get in front of people in a digital way. But it's also more difficult to advance the conversation because the incumbents have a moat now, right? They know them, they've seen them. I'm just a face on a screen at this point. So it's trying to find that balance and getting out there. So excited about today's event that you're hosting because you get to be out there pressing the flesh with folks.
A couple years of absence, I think it's time for us to kind of see each other again and I think just getting in front of folks is an important part of the human experience,
Absolutely.
right? And but any last thoughts on how do people get involved with NAA? What do they need to do? Do they call you, or who do they reach out to?
Oh, well, they can reach out to any one of our members and figure out how to submit a membership package. But look, my final comments here is diversity breeds diversity. So by having people at the top that are interviewing candidates, that are advancing and mentoring, I think that's the best way we're going to be able to address the issues that underpin the challenges facing the industry.
Yeah. Thank you, Gerson. Oh, Anna Marie, what about you from WAVE perspective? How do people get involved with the organization? Who do they reach out to?
Yeah, we have a website which has a lot of our information, but candidly, anyone on our board of directors, myself, anyone else on our steering committees as well, we'd all be delighted if folks have questions about the organization or ways that we could potentially partner. We're always very happy to have those conversations.
That's terrific. Well, thank you to both of you for sharing your thoughts and your experience and being a part of AIM's AIM High Live program this morning.
Thank you very
for
much.
having us.